오늘부터 책은 종이책을 한번 읽어보도록 하겠고 The Loss of Human Nature고요. 로버트 그린 책부터 읽어보도록 할게요. Fortunately, to acquire rationality is not complicated. It simply requires knowing and working through a three-step process. First, we must become aware of what we shall call low-grade irrationality. This is a function of continued moods and feelings that we experience in life below the level of consciousness. When we plan or make decisions, we are not aware of how deeply these moods and feelings skew the thinking process. They create in our thinking pronounced biases that are so deeply ingrained in us that we see evidence of them in all cultures and all periods of history. These biases, by distorting reality, lead to the mistakes and ineffective decisions that plague our lives. Being aware of them, we can begin to counterbalance their effects. Second, we must understand the nature of what we should call high-grade irrationality. This occurs when our emotions become inflamed, generally because of the sudden pressures. As we think about our anger, excitement, resentment, or suspicion, it intensifies into a reactive state. Everything we see or hear is interpreted through the lens of this emotion. We become more sensitive and more prone to other emotional reactions. Impatience and resentment can bleed into anger and deep distrust. These reactive states are what lead people to violence, to manifestations, and to uncontrollable greed, or to desire to control another person. This form of irrationality is the source of more acute problems and crises and conflicts and disastrous decisions. Understanding how this type of irrationality operates can allow us to recognize the reactive state as it is happening and pull back before we do something we regret. Third, we need to reenact certain strategies and exercises that will strengthen the thinking part of the brain and give it more power in the external struggle with our emotions. Emotions are continually affecting our thought process and decisions below the level of our awareness, and the most common emotion of them all is the desire for pleasure and avoidance of pain. Our thoughts almost inevitably revolve around this desire. We simply recoil from entertaining ideas that are unpleasant or painful to us. We imagine we are looking for the truth or being realistic, when in fact we are holding on to ideas that bring a release from tension and soothe our egos, make us feel superior. This principle and thinking is the source of all our mental biases. If you believe that you are somehow immune to any of the following biases, it is simply an example of a pleasure principle in action. Instead, it is best to search and see how they continually operate inside you, as well as to learn how to identify such irrationality in others. Confirmation bias. I look at events and arrive at my decisions through more or less irrational processes. But because of the pleasure principle and its unconscious influence, and we manage to find the evidence that confirms what we want to believe. This is known as a confirmation bias. In the end, the people want to hear their own ideas and preferences confirmed by the expert opinion. They will interpret what you say in light of what you want to hear, and if your advice runs counter to their desires, they will find some way to dismiss your opinion, your so-called expertise. The more powerful the person, the more there's this form of the confirmation bias. When investigating compromise biases in the world, take a look at the list that would seem a little too good to be true. Conviction bias, I believe in this idea so strongly it must be true. Those, on the other hand, who express nuances, whose tone is more hesitant and reveal weakness and self-doubt, they're probably lying or so we think. These biases make us susceptible to salesmen or demagogues who display their conviction as a way to convince and deceive. They know that people are hungry for entertainment, so they cloak their half-truths with dramatic effects. Appearance bias. Understanding the people at their word, I see them just as they are. We see people not as they are, but as they appear to us. And these appearances are usually misleading. First, the people have trained themselves in social situations to present the front that is appropriate and that will be judged positively. They seem to be in a favor of novice causes, always presenting themselves as hardworking and conscientious. We take these masks in for reality. Second, we are prone to fall for the halo effect. When you see certain negative or positive qualities in a person, social awkwardness and intelligence, other positive or negative qualities are implied that fit with us. People who are good-looking generally seem more trustworthy, and particularly politicians. If a person is successful, we imagine they're probably also ethical, conscientious, and deserving of their good fortune. This obscures the fact that many people who have gotten and have done so through less than moral actions in which they are cleverly disguised from view. The group bias. My ideas are my own. I do not listen to the group. I'm not a conformist. We are social animals by nature. The feeling of isolation, of difference from the group is depressing and terrifying. We experience tremendous relief when we find others who think the same way we do. In fact, we are motivated to take up ideas and opinions because they bring us in disability. We are unaware of this pull, and so imagine we have come to certain ideas and completely on our own. Yet few would ever admit this influence on their thought patterns. The blame bias. I learn from my experience and mistakes. Mistakes and value elicit the need to explain. We want to learn the lesson and not repeat the experience. But in truth, we do not like to look at closely at what we did. Our introspection is limited. Our natural response in blame others and circumstances are a momentary lapse of judgment. The reason for this bias is that it is often too painful to look at our mistakes. It calls into question our feelings and spirituality. It pokes at our ego. Desire and emotion will blind us yet again, and we will repeat exactly the same mistake and go through the same mild recriminating process. Spirituality bias. I'm different. I'm more rational than others, more ethical as well. Few would say this to people in conversation. It sounds arrogant, but in numerous opinion polls and studies, when asked to compare themselves with others, people generally express a variation of this. It's the equivalent of an optical illusion. We cannot seem to see our faults and irrationalities in only those of others. We know, however, the reality, and so some people, parcel of us, are merely deceiving ourselves, and rational and ethical qualities must be achieved through awareness and effort. They do not come naturally, they come through a maturation process. Beware the inflaming factors, local emotions, and continually affect our thinking, and they originate from our own impulses. And for instance, the desire for pleasing and comforting thoughts, hybrid emotion, however, comes at certain moments in reaction. An explosive pitch and is generally sparked by something external. A person who gets under our skin or particular circumstances, the level of arousal is higher and our attention is captured completely. The more we think about emotion, the stronger it gets, which makes us focus even more on it, and so on and so forth. Our minds tunnel into the emotion and everything reminds us of our anger or excitement. We become reactive because we are unable to bear the tension this brings. High-grade emotion usually culminates in some rash action with disastrous consequences. In the middle of such an attack, we feel possessed. As if in a second, limbic self has taken over. It is best to be aware of these factors so that you can stop the mind from the tunneling and prevent the religion action that you will always come to regret. You should also be aware of hyper irrationality in others to either get out of their way or help bring them back to reality. Trigger points from early childhood. In early childhood, we were at our most sensitive and vulnerable. Our relationship to our parents had a much greater impact on us further back in time we go. The same could be said for any early purple experience. These vulnerabilities and wounds remain buried and deep within our minds. Sometimes we try to repress the memory of these impulses if they happen to be negative, grief, fears, or humiliations. Sometimes, however, they are associated with positive emotions and experiences of love and attention that we continually want to relive later in life and our personal hormones and associated with memory. Now connected to Chromebook underscore C15. Hmm. I don't know. It's okay with that or no? I'm not sure. Take, for example, a young man who had a distant narcissistic mother as an infant or child he experienced recognition as abandonment, and to be abandoned must mean he wasn't somehow unworthy of her love. Or similarly, a new sibling on the scene caused his mother to give him much less attention, of which he equally experienced as abandonment later in life in a relationship. A woman might hint disapproval at some traits or action of his, all of which is part of a healthy relationship. This will hit a trigger point, and she's noticing his flaws, which he imagines precedes her abandonment of him. He feels a powerful rush of emotion, a sense of imminent betrayal. He does not see the source of this. It is beyond his control. He overreacts, accuses, withdraws, all of which leads to the very thing he feared, abandonment. His reaction was to some reflection in his mind, not to the reality. This is the height of irrationality. The way to recognize this in your life and in others is by noticing behaviors that is suddenly childish, it is intensity, and seemingly out of character. This could center on any key emotion. It could be fear of losing control or failure. In this case, we react by withdrawing from the situation that represents of others, like a child curling up into a ball. A sudden illness in a brought on by the intense fear will conveniently cause us to have to leave the scene. It could be love desperately searching to recreate a close parental or sibling relationship in the present, triggered by someone who vaguely reminds us of the lost paradise. It could be extreme mistrust and originating from an authority figure in early childhood who disappointed or betrayed us, and generally the father. This often triggers a sudden rebellious attitude. The great danger here is that in misreading the present and reacting to something in the past, we create a conflict, disappointments, and the mistrust and erroneous trend in the world. In some way, we are programmed to repeat the early experience in the present. Our only defense is awareness that it isn't happening. We can recognize any trigger point by the experience of emotions that are unusually primal, more uncontrollable than normal. They trigger tears and depression or excessive hope. People under the spell of these emotions in a world often have a very different tone of voice and body language as if they were physically reliving a moment from early life. In the midst of such an attack, we must struggle to detach ourselves and contemplate the possible source, the wound in early childhood and the parenting has locked us into. This deep understanding of ourselves and our vulnerabilities is a key step toward becoming rational. Sudden gains or losses and sudden success or winnings can be very dangerous. Neurologically, chemicals are released in our brain that give it a powerful jolt in arousal and energy, leading to the desire to repeat this experience. It can be the start of any kind of addiction and manic behavior. Also, when gains come quickly, we tend to lose sight of the basic wisdom that true success and real lasts and must come through hard work. We acquire a feeling of grandiosity. We become especially vigilant to anyone who tries to warn us. They don't understand. We tell ourselves. Because this event cannot be sustained, we experience an inevitable fall, which is all the more painful, leading to the depression part of the cycle. Although gamblers are the most prone to this, it equally applies to the business people during bubbles and to people who gain sudden attention from the public. Unexpected losses in a stream of losses and equally create irrational reactions. The solution here is simple. Whenever you experience an unusual gains or losses, and that is precisely the time to step back, and it can never stop within some necessary information or optimism. B. Extra worry and sudden success and attention, they are not built on anything that lasts and they have been addictive for. And the fall is always painful. Rising pressure. The people around you generally feel seen and in control of their lives. But put any other in stressful circumstances with the pressure rising, and you will see a different reality. The cool mask of self-control comes off. They suddenly lash out in anger, within a paranoid streak, and become hypersensitive and often petty. Under stress or any threat, the most primitive parts of the brain are aroused and engaged, overwhelming people's reasoning powers. In fact, stress or tension can reveal flaws in people that they have carefully concealed from view. It is often wise to observe people in such moments and precisely as a way to judge their true character. Whenever you notice rising pressure and stress levels in your life, you must watch yourself carefully. Monitor any signs of unusual brittleness or sensitivity, certain suspicions, fears disproportionate to the circumstances. Observe within such a detachment as possible, finding time and space to be alone. You need perspective. Never imagine that you are someone who can withstand rising stress without emotional language. It is not possible, but through self-awareness and reflection, you can prevent yourself from making decisions you will come to regret. Hmm. It is best to recognize these inflammers and apply how they affect others, but just in yourself. No one can remain indifferent to them. People find themselves incapable of reasoning or maintaining any distance in their presence. They make you think of them continually when not in their presence. They have an obsessive quality and they can lead you to extreme actions as a devoted followers or the inveterate enemy. On either end of the spectrum, attraction or repulsion, you will tend to be irrational and you will desperately need to distance yourself. A good strategy realizes to see through the front they project. They inevitably try to cast a larger than life imagine. Hmm. Being in a group does not stimulate independent reasoning, but rather the intense desire to be alone. It is often best to avoid in a group setting if possible in order to maintain your reasoning powers or to enter such moments with the maximum skepticism. Democracy and politics and the media try to stir a continuous sense of panic, urgency, and outrage. They must keep the emotional levels high and their defense is simple. Consider your reasoning powers and your ability to think for yourself. Your most precious possession. Resent any kind of illusion upon your independent mind by others, and when you feel you are in the presence of demagogue, become doubly wary and analytical. Hmm. Rationality isn't something to be acquired and by individuals. First and foremost, it is just through history and all cultures of people of high rationality, the types who have made progress possible. Warren Buffett, to name but a few, all of these types share certain qualities of realistic appraisal of themselves and their weaknesses, a devotion to truth and reality, a tolerance toward people, and the ability to reach goals that they have set. The second factor is that almost all of us at some point in our lives have experienced moments of greater rationality. This often comes within what we shall call the maker's mindset. We have a project to get done and perhaps with deadline. The only emotion we can afford is an excitement and energy, and other emotions that simply make it possible to concentrate. Because we have to get results and become exceptionally practical, we focus on the work, our mind calm, our intruding. If people try to interrupt or infect us with emotions, we resent it. The moments as a feeling is in a few weeks or hours reveal the rational self that is willing to come out. Adjust to represent some awareness and some practice. Know yourself thoroughly. The emotional self thrives on ignorance. The moment you're aware of how it operates and that dominates you, in the moment it loses its hold on you and can be tamed. Therefore, your first step toward the rational is always inward. You want to catch the emotional self in action. For this purpose, you must reflect on how you operate under stress. What particular weaknesses can come out in such moments and desire to please, to bully or control, and deep levels of mistrust. Look at your decisions, and especially those that have been ineffective. Can you see a pattern and underlying insecurity that impels them? Examine your strengths and what makes you different from other people. This will help you decide upon goals and match with your long-term interests and that are aligned with your skills. By knowing and valuing what marks you as different, you will also be able to resist and pull up the group bias and effect. Examine your emotions and to their roots. You're angry, let the feeling settle with it, and think about it. Was it triggered by something seemingly trivial or petty? That is a sure sign there is something or someone else behind it. Perhaps a more uncontrollable emotion is the soul, such as envy or paranoia. You have to look at the scare in the eye, dig below, and a trigger point to see where they started. For these purposes, it might be wise to use a journal in which you record your self-assessments with ruthless objectivity. Your greatest danger is in your ego and how it makes you unconsciously make illusions about yourself. These may be comforting in the moment, but in the long run, they make you defensive and unable to learn or progress. Find a neutral position from which you observe your actions with a bit of detachment and even humor. Soon, all of this will become second nature, and when the emotional self suddenly rears its head, in some situations, you will see it as it happens and be able to step back. Find the neutral positions. Increasing your reaction time. This power comes through practice and repetition. When some event or reactions requires a response, then you must train yourself to step back. This could mean physically removing yourself to a place where you can be alone and not feel any pressure to respond. Or it could mean writing that angry email but not sending it. You sleep on it for a day or two. You do not make phone calls and communicate while feeling some sudden emotion, particularly resentment. If you find yourself rushing to commit to people, to hire or be hired of them, step back and give it a day. Cool the emotions down. The longer you can take, the better, because in perspective comes with time. Consider just like in resistance training, the longer you can resist in reaction, the more mental space and you have enough for actual reflection, and the stronger your mind will become. Accept the people as facts. The problem is that there are continually judging people, wishing that were something they were not. We want to change them. We want them to think and act. It's suddenly the most and often the way we think and act. And because this is not possible, because everyone is different, we are continually frustrated and upset. Inside, see other people as a phenomena, as natural as any comets or plants. They simply exist. They come in varieties, making life rich and interesting. Work with what you give you instead of resisting and trying to change them. Make understanding people in a fun game and a solving of puzzles. It is a part of the human community. Yes, people are irrational, but so are you. Make your acceptance of human nature as radical as possible. This will calm you down and have you observe people more desperately, understanding them at a deeper level. You will stop projecting in your own emotions onto them. All of this will give you more balance and calmness and more mental space for thinking. Find the optimal balance of thinking and emotion. We cannot divorce emotion from thinking. The two are completely intertwined. But there is an absolute dominant factor. Some people are more clearly governed by emotion than others. The horse is an emotion in nature, continually impelling us to move, and this horse has a tremendous energy and power. But without the rider, it cannot be guided. It is wild, subject to predators, and continually heading into trouble. The rider is not thinking self. Through training and practice, he holds the reins and guides the horse, transform this powerful energy into something productive. The one without the other is useless, and without the rider, no directed movement or purpose. Without the horse, no energy, no power, and most people, the horse dominates and the rider is weak. Instead of being slaves to this energy, we channel it. This is essence of rationality. As an example of this an ideal, in action try to maintain a perfect balance between skepticism and rider and the curiosity horse. The two can coexist. It is a balance and there are genesis and possess. We have felt this in your own life in when observing a project in a time flying by and experiencing occasional bursts of excitement as you make discoveries or progress in your work. There are other places as well. Being able to tame the emotional self leads to an overall calmness and clarity. In this state of mind, you are less consumed by petty conflicts and considerations. Your actions are more effective, which also leads into less turmoil